Picture this: a private yacht anchored off the coast of Monaco. Crystal glasses are clinking. The air smells like expensive cigars and pure, unfiltered arrogance. Two men are shaking hands, laughing that deep belly laugh people do when they think they are untouchable. They just closed a deal for $1.2 billion. They are the new kings of tech. The headlines call them geniuses. The world worships them. Now, cut to a dark, freezing parking lot behind a 24-hour diner in New Jersey. There's a man huddled in the back seat of a rusted-out Honda Civic. He is wrapped in a dirty, moth-eaten blanket. He hasn't eaten a hot meal in 3 days. He is watching that same celebration on a phone with a shattered screen, tears freezing on his face. That man is me. You see that billion-dollar empire? That revolutionary code they are toasting to? It's mine. Every single line of it. My best friend and my fiancé didn't just steal my work. They framed me for embezzlement. They destroyed my reputation. They took my home, my savings, and my future. They left me to rot in the street while they bought islands. But arrogance is a blindfold. They think I'm broken. They think I'm history. But they forgot one critical thing about the software they stole. I built a secret back door. And by the end of this story, you are going to watch me walk right back in and burn their entire world to the ground. Let's go back to where it started. 5 years ago, I wasn't shivering in a frozen car. I was sitting in a cramped, windowless garage in Seattle. The air didn't smell like luxury. It smelled like stale pizza, cheap coffee, and overheated servers. It was the best time of my life. There were three of us: me, Jason, and Elena. Jason was my best friend since kindergarten. You know that one friend who could talk his way out of a murder charge? That was Jason. He had a smile that made you trust him instantly. He was the kind of guy who would borrow 20 bucks, spend it on lottery tickets, lose, and somehow convince you that you were the one who had a good time. But I loved him like a brother. Actually, more than a brother. We were a unit. We survived high school bullies together. We survived college exams together. I thought we would survive success together. Then, there was Elena, the love of my life. We had been together since our junior year of college. She was the one thing that made the sleepless nights bearable. She was smart, fierce, and beautiful. We were planning our wedding for the following spring. She had picked out the venue, I had picked out the ring. We even had names picked out for our future kids. And then there was the work. We were building something called Sentient. It was an AI algorithm designed to revolutionize global logistics. It sounds boring, I know. But imagine a system that could predict supply chain collapses before they happen. Imagine software that could save shipping companies billions of dollars a year just by rerouting trucks 5 minutes faster. It was powerful, and I built it. I was the brain. I wrote every single line of code. I lived in front of 3 monitors for 2 years straight. My eyes were constantly red. My back ached. I missed holidays. I missed my grandmother's funeral because the servers crashed and I had to fix them. I gave everything to that code. I poured my soul into the keyboard because I believed in the vision. Jason? Jason didn't know how to write a Hello World script in Python. He couldn't turn on a server if his life depended on it. But he was the face. He wore the custom suits. He took the meetings. He shook the hands. "You're the genius, Mark," he would tell me, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "I'm just the mouth. I keep the wolves away so you can work your magic." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? We had a deal, a verbal agreement, shaken on over cheap beer, and later a signed operating agreement. 50-50 partners, equal equity. Elena was going to run HR and operations once we went public. We called it the Golden Triangle. Nothing could break us. I remember one night specifically. It was about 6 months before everything fell apart. We had just cracked the final encryption problem. The code was stable. It was faster than anything Google or Amazon had. We were sitting on the concrete floor of that garage. Jason poured us cheap whiskey into red plastic cups. He looked me dead in the eye. He looked serious. He said, "Mark, we are going to change the world, and we are going to do it together. No matter how much money they throw at us, We don't sell out unless we both agree. We ride together, we die together. I toasted to that. I trusted him with my life. I would have taken a bullet for him right there in that garage. Fast forward to 6 months ago. The buzz was insane. Tech blogs were calling Sentient the next unicorn. We had venture capitalists camping out in our lobby. We moved from the garage to a glossy, glass-walled office downtown. We had 50 employees. We were on the cover of magazines. We were weeks away from a massive acquisition deal. A tech giant, I won't say the name, but you probably have their phone in your pocket right now, offered to buy us out. The offer was on the table. Not millions. Billions. My share would have been enough to buy a small country. I remember looking at Elena the night the offer letter came in. We were in bed, staring at the ceiling, just dreaming. The adrenaline was keeping us awake. "What's the first thing you're going to buy?" she asked me, tracing circles on my chest. "A house for your mom," I said. "And then a boat for Jason. He's always wanted one." She laughed. She kissed me. She told me I was a good man. She told me she was so lucky to be marrying me. She looked at me with what I thought was pure love. Everything was perfect. It was the American dream on steroids. I was the kid from the trailer park who used his brain to conquer the world. I had the money coming. I had the best friend. I had the girl. I felt invincible. But I was blind. I was so focused on the code, so focused on the future, that I didn't see what was happening right in front of my face. I didn't see the subtle changes. I didn't see the way Jason stopped looking me in the eye during meetings. I didn't notice that Elena started staying late at the office with Jason when I went home to sleep. I didn't see that, while I was building a company, they were building a coffin for me. The golden life was a lie. It was a beautiful, shiny, expensive lie. And the higher you climb, the harder you fall. And I was about to fall further than anyone could survive. It didn't happen all at once. Betrayal is never an explosion. It's a slow leak. It started with the silence. I walked into the office on a Tuesday morning, about 3 weeks before the acquisition was supposed to close. The glass walls of the conference room were frosted, but the door was cracked open just an inch. I heard Jason's voice. He wasn't using his laughing, charming tone. He was speaking low and fast. I heard him say, "He's never going to read it. He trusts me too much." Then I heard Elena's voice. She said, "Are you sure this is watertight? If Mark finds out." I pushed the door open. Silence. Immediate, suffocating silence. They both snapped their heads toward me. Jason's face went pale for a split second, but then that million-dollar smile plastered itself right back on. "Mark, my man!" he shouted, maybe a little too loudly. "We were just talking about the surprise party for your birthday. You ruined the surprise." My birthday was 4 months away. I laughed. I actually laughed. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself they were planning something nice for the team. I ignored the knot in my stomach that was screaming at me to run. That was the first red flag. The second one was the paperwork. Later that afternoon, Jason walked into my office with a stack of documents about 3 inches thick. He dropped them on my desk with a heavy thud. "Compliance updates," he said, checking his watch. "The lawyers for the acquisition need us to update our operating agreement and the IP transfer protocols. Just standard corporate nonsense. I need your signature on the tabbed pages so I can courier this out by 5. I reached for the first page to read it. Jason put his hand over the paper. "Bro," he said, rolling his eyes, "it's legalese. It says we own the company. The sky is blue and taxes are bad. If you read all that, we miss the courier, the audit gets delayed, and the payout gets pushed back a month. Do you want the money now or later?" He looked at me with those trusting eyes, the eyes of the guy who held my hair back when I threw up after prom, the eyes of the guy I built a life with. "I trust you," I said. I picked up a pen. I signed every single tabbed page without reading a word. I signed away my rights. I signed away my voting power. I signed my own death warrant, and I thanked him for handling the boring stuff. Things got weird at home, too. Elena was distant. She started taking phone calls in the bathroom with the shower running. She changed the passcode on her phone. When I tried to hug her, She felt stiff like a statue. I'm just stressed about the deal, she told me. Once we sell, we can relax. Just give me space until the check clears. I gave her space. I gave her everything. The final crack happened 3 days later. I tried to log into the master server to run a final diagnostic on the code. I typed in my admin password. Access denied. That was impossible. I wrote the system. I was the super admin. I tried again. Access denied. Contact administrator. I felt a cold sweat break out on the back of my neck. I called the IT lead, a guy named Gary, who I had hired personally. Gary, why am I locked out of the master node? Gary sounded nervous. Sorry, Mark. Jason ordered a total security freeze pending the audit. No one has admin access except the CEO. It's just until the deal closes. Security protocol. Since when does Jason make technical calls? I asked. I don't know, man. I just do what I'm told. Talk to him. I hung up. I stared at the screen. The blinking red text felt like a warning. I walked down the hall to Jason's office. His door was locked. I knocked. No answer. I called Elena, straight to voicemail. I stood in the middle of the hallway of the company I built, surrounded by employees I hired, and for the first time in my life, I felt completely and totally alone. I didn't know it yet, but the trap had already snapped shut. I was just the last one to hear the sound. Monday morning arrived. The acquisition was scheduled to close at noon. I put on my best suit. It was charcoal gray. Elena had picked it out for me a month ago. I tied my tie, looked in the mirror, and told myself to calm down. The glitches, the locked files, the weird vibes, it was just stress. Today, we would be billionaires. Today, everything would change. I drove to the office. I parked in my reserved spot. I walked to the glass doors of the lobby, the same doors I had walked through 1,000 times. I pulled out my key card. I tapped it against the reader. Beep, red light. Access denied. I frowned. I tapped it again. Beep, red light. Must be the system update, I muttered to myself. I waved at the security guard at the front desk. His name was Mike. I knew about his kids. I gave him a Christmas bonus out of my own pocket every year. Hey, Mike, I shouted through the glass. Buzz me in, the card is acting up. Mike didn't smile. He didn't wave back. He looked down at his desk, picked up a phone, whispered something, and then looked away. He wouldn't meet my eyes. My stomach dropped. A cold sensation spread through my chest. Suddenly, the side door opened. But it wasn't Mike. 2 large men in dark suits stepped out. I didn't recognize them. They were private security. Big guys. No necks. Mr. Reynolds, one of them said. He blocked my path. You are not permitted on the premises. Not permitted? I laughed. It was a nervous, high-pitched laugh. I own the premises. Get out of my way. I tried to step around them. The guard grabbed my arm. His grip was like a vice. Sir, if you try to enter, we are authorized to use force. Please leave. Get your hands off me, I yelled. I shoved him back. The doors behind them slid open. It's okay, gentlemen. Let him in. It was Jason. He was standing in the lobby, wearing a tailored navy suit. He looked calm. He looked like a king surveying his kingdom. I stormed past the guards and got right in his face. Jason, what is going on? Why am I locked out? Why are these gorillas manhandling me? Jason sighed. He looked at me with a mix of pity and disgust. Come to the conference room, Mark. The board is waiting. The board? The meeting isn't until noon. We started early, he said, without you. I followed him into the conference room. The long mahogany table was full. Our investors were there. Our lawyers were there. And sitting right next to Jason's empty chair was Elena. She was wearing her engagement ring. She was looking down at her hands. She didn't look up when I walked in. Sit down, Mark, Jason said. He remained standing. I didn't sit. I want an explanation, now. Jason picked up a remote and clicked it. The projector screen on the wall lit up. It showed a bank transfer record. A transfer of $5 million from the company's operating account to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. The account holder's name was Mark Reynolds. We know what you did, Mark, Jason said softly. The room was dead silent. What I did? I stared at the screen. I didn't do that. I've never been to the Cayman Islands. That's a fake. Is it? Jason reached into his folder. He pulled out a document. It was the stack of papers I had signed last week. This is the confession you signed. You admitted to embezzling funds to cover your gambling debts. You agreed to transfer your equity back to the company as restitution. My knees felt weak. I grabbed the back of a chair to steady myself. I didn't read that. You told me it was compliance paperwork. You lied to me. You signed it, Jason said coldly. Your signature, notarized, legal. I looked at the board members. You can't believe this. I built this company. I wrote the code. Check the IP logs. We did, Jason said. And according to the logs, you tried to wipe the servers on Friday. That's why we locked you out. To protect the asset. It was a setup. A perfect, watertight frame job. He had used my trust against me. He had used my focus on the code to blind me to the paperwork. I turned to Elena. She was my last hope. She knew I didn't gamble. She knew I was innocent. Elena, I pleaded, my voice cracked. Tell them. Tell them this is insane. Tell them I'm innocent. Elena finally looked up. Her eyes were dry. There were no tears. Her face was hard, like stone. Mark, please, she said. Her voice was steady. Stop lying. We tried to help you. We gave you so many chances to come clean. You need professional help. The room spun. The air left my lungs. It felt like I had been punched in the throat. You're in on it, I whispered. You helped him fake the logs. You have my passwords. She didn't answer. She just reached out and took Jason's hand. He squeezed it. Here's the deal, Jason said. He slid a single piece of paper across the long table. You leave quietly, you resign. You surrender all claims to the company and the IP. In exchange, we don't press charges. We don't call the FBI. You walk away a free man, penniless, but free. And if I don't? I asked. Then the police are waiting in the lobby, Jason said. 20 years for corporate espionage and grand larceny. You'll rot in a cell, Mark. And while you're in there, Elena and I will be on a beach. I looked at the paper. I looked at the security guards waiting by the door. I looked at the woman I was supposed to marry, holding hands with the brother I never had. I realized I had lost. If I fought, I went to jail. They had the money, the lawyers, and the evidence. I had nothing. I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely hold it. I signed the paper. Smart choice, Jason said. He didn't even look at me. Security, escort Mr. Reynolds off the property. He is trespassing. The guards grabbed me by the arms. They dragged me out of the room. I didn't fight. I was numb. They threw me out the front door onto the sidewalk. I stood there for a moment, dazed. I reached for my phone to call my dad just to hear a friendly voice. Ping, notification. Bank alert. Your accounts have been frozen pending legal investigation. Ping, notification, email, lease termination notice. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. I checked my balance. 0. I walked to my car. I just wanted to go home and sleep. I wanted to wake up from this nightmare. But as I walked, I saw the news ticker on a giant screen across the street. Breaking news. Tech giant acquires Sentient for $1.2 billion. Sole founder Jason Miller, hailed as a visionary. Sole founder. They didn't just take my money. They didn't just take my girl. They erased me. It was like I never existed. I stood on that sidewalk, watching the world celebrate my destruction. And inside, something snapped. The sadness evaporated. The shock faded. And in its place, a cold, dark fire began to burn. I turned my back on the building. I started walking. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew one thing. I wasn't done. Not even close. The fall wasn't graceful. It was a crash. For the first week, I tried to fight. I called lawyers. I called the labor board. I called old friends. But Jason had been thorough. He had painted me as a volatile, gambling addict who stole from the company. The lawyers wanted a $10,000 retainer I didn't have. My friends stopped answering my texts. By the second week, the money ran out. I sold my furniture to pay for a motel. When that ran out, I slept in my car. It was a 10-year-old Honda Civic I had kept as a backup. Now it was my bedroom, kitchen, and living room. I parked behind a 24-hour diner off the highway in New Jersey. It was safe enough. The lights stayed on all night. Have you ever been truly invisible? And that's what homelessness is. You can stand on a street corner, screaming on the inside, and people will walk right past you. They don't look at you. They look through you. To them, you're just trash on the sidewalk. You're a cautionary tale. I lost 20 pounds. My clothes hung off me. I stopped shaving. I looked like a madman. And in a way, I was. I was maddened by grief. I spent my nights staring at the ceiling of my car, replaying that meeting in my head. I replayed the moment Elena took his hand. That image hurt more than the hunger. One night, about 2 months in, it was freezing. The kind of cold that hurts your bones. I was scrolling through my phone. The screen was cracked, the battery was dying, stealing Wi-Fi from the diner. And there they were. A photo on Instagram, Jason and Elena. They were in Paris. They were drinking champagne in front of the Eiffel Tower. The caption read, "Celebrating the acquisition. Life is good. Blessed. Blessed." Something inside me broke, but it wasn't a break that made me weak. It was the kind of break that snaps things into place. I stopped crying. I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I stared at that photo and I zoomed in on Jason's phone, which was sitting on the table in the picture. It was unlocked, and on the screen I could see the dashboard of the Sentient app. He was still using the admin build. My brain woke up. The fog cleared. I remembered something. 3 years ago, during a late-night coding session, I had built a safeguard. I called it the dead man's switch. It wasn't malicious code. It was a diagnostic tool. I built it so that if the system ever crashed completely and locked everyone out, I could access the kernel through a hidden port. I never told Jason about it. Not because I didn't trust him back then, but because he wouldn't have understood it. He was a salesman, not an engineer. And because it wasn't part of the official documentation, the auditors wouldn't have found it. They had the source code, yes, but they were running the compiled version I built. Unless they recompiled the entire kernel from scratch, which would take months and cost millions, that switch was still there, buried deep in the architecture. I sat up in the back seat. My breath was visible in the cold air. I needed a computer. The next morning, I drove to a pawn shop. I took off my watch. It was a vintage Omega my grandfather gave me. It was the only thing of value I had left. It broke my heart to unclasp it. "How much?" I asked the guy behind the counter. He looked at it. He looked at me, dirty, unshaven, smelling like old coffee. $200. It was worth $3,000. "Deal," I said. I took the cash. I bought a cheap, heavy used laptop from the clearance shelf for $150. I used the rest for coffee and a sandwich. I went to the public library. I found a corner in the back, away from the windows. I plugged in the laptop. I cracked my knuckles. I typed in the IP address of the Sentient server. Request timed out. My heart sank. They must have changed the firewall rules. I tried again. This time, I used the specific port number for the dead man's switch. Port 8814. It was my mother's birthday. Connecting. I held my breath. The cursor blinked. Connection established. Enter passkey. I almost screamed. It was there. They were so arrogant, so focused on the money and the marketing, that they hadn't done a deep code scrub. They were driving a Ferrari they didn't know how to fix. I typed in the passkey. Access granted. Welcome, admin. I was in. I could have deleted everything right then. One command. Sudo rm rf. I could have wiped the database. The company would collapse, the stock would tank, they would lose billions. But that wasn't enough. If I just deleted the data, they would blame it on a hacker. They would claim insurance money, they would spin it. They would survive. No, I needed something better. I needed total destruction. I needed to expose them for the frauds they were. I started digging through the logs. Since I had root access, I could see everything, every email, every chat message, every file transfer. And that's when I found the smoking gun. It wasn't just the theft of my company, it was fraud. Massive federal prison level fraud. I found emails between Jason and the acquiring company's VP. They were colluding to inflate the user numbers artificially before the sale. They were using bot farms to fake traffic, so the evaluation would be higher. And Elena? I found her messages too. She was hiding the real financial reports in a subfolder, presenting fake ones to the board. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a crime scene. I sat back in the hard library chair. A plan formed in my mind. A dark, beautiful plan. They were hosting a global launch event in 3 days. It was going to be live streamed to millions. The press would be there. The investors would be there. The FBI would probably be watching too, since it was such a high-profile event. Jason was going to do a live demo of the software. I looked at the calendar. 3 days. I wasn't going to delete the code. I was going to rewrite the output. I was going to turn their own presentation into a confession. I spent the next 72 hours in that library. I barely slept. I drank water from the fountain. I ate vending machine crackers. I wrote a script that would execute exactly when Jason hit the enter key on stage. I called it Project Icarus because they flew too close to the sun and I was about to melt their wax wings. The night before the launch, I finished the script. I uploaded it to the server. I set the timer. I closed the laptop. I walked out to my car. It was still freezing, but I didn't feel the cold anymore. I felt the heat of the fire I had just lit. Tomorrow, the world would see the truth. Tomorrow, the Golden Triangle would collapse. The day of the launch arrived. It was held at the Grand Convention Center downtown, the same place they host the auto show. It was packed. 3,000 people, investors, tech journalists, industry titans, and in the front row, the acquisition team from the tech giant, ready to sign the final papers on stage. I was there too, but I wasn't in the front row. I was in the back, wearing a black vest and a white shirt. I had spent my last $40 on a used catering uniform. I was holding a tray of champagne glasses. Invisibility. If you dress like a waiter, you disappear. No one looks at the help. I walked right past security. I walked right past the board members who had fired me. I walked right past Mike, the security guard who kicked me out. None of them saw me. They only saw the champagne. I found a spot in the shadows, near the audio-visual booth. I had a clear view of the stage. The lights dimmed. Dramatic music swells. A spotlight hit the center stage. Jason walked out. He looked magnificent. I'll give him that. He was wearing a $5,000 suit. He was glowing with confidence. The crowd cheered. He waved like he was Caesar entering Rome. "Thank you," he said. His voice boomed through the speakers. "Today we don't just launch a product. We launch the future." He went through the slide deck. It was slick. It was charming. He told the story of the garage. He told the story of the hard work. He left me out of the story completely. He said, "I stayed up nights coding this engine. He lied so easily. It made my blood boil. But I waited. I gripped the plastic tray so hard, I thought it would snap. And now," Jason said, turning to the massive 50-foot screen behind him, "the moment you've been waiting for. A live demonstration of Sentient's power." He walked over to a podium. There was a laptop there. My laptop. Well, the one I had set up for him months ago. "I am going to ask Sentient to analyze the global shipping routes for the entire Pacific Ocean," Jason announced. "Normally, this takes a supercomputer 3 days. Sentient will do it in 10 seconds. He typed the command. He hit enter. I held my breath. The screen behind him swirled with cool blue graphics. The crowd leaned in. The loading bar filled up. 98%, 99%, 100%. Then, the blue screen flickered. It turned a harsh, bright red. The audience gasped. Jason laughed nervously. "Ah, the demo gods are angry today. Just a visual glitch. One moment." He hit escape. He hit refresh. The red didn't go away. Instead, text started to scroll. Huge, white, block letters. "System error. Fraud detected." User traffic, 98% bot farm. Real revenue, 0.0. The room went deadly silent. You could hear a pin drop. Jason's face went white. He tapped the keyboard frantically. "Cut the feed!" he hissed at the AV crew. I looked at the AV guys. They were frantically pushing buttons, but nothing was working. My code had locked the display port. The only way to stop it was to unplug the power to the entire building. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jason stammered into the mic, "we seem to have been hacked. This is a malicious attack. None of this data is real." He was good. He almost sold it. The investors looked confused, but they weren't leaving yet. They wanted to believe him. Then came the twist. Jason pulled his phone out of his pocket. He needed to tell Elena to kill the servers physically. He needed to coordinate the cover-up. He thought he was being subtle. He held the phone below the podium out of sight. But he forgot something. Part of the feature set I built for the demo was seamless mobile integration. The system was designed to mirror the admin's mobile device to the main screen for remote management. And since I had administrative control, I activated the mirror function. On the 50-foot screen, the red warnings vanished. In their place, a vertical image appeared. It was the screen of an iPhone. Jason's iPhone. The crowd murmured. They saw the apps. They saw the background photo, him and Elena. Jason didn't realize the screen behind him had changed. He was furiously typing a text message, and as he typed, the words appeared in 10-foot-tall letters behind his head. To Elena. Text. "It's happening. He found the back door. Pull the plugs now. Destroy the hard drives. Don't let them see the fake logs." The entire auditorium read the text at the same time. A collective gasp ripped through the room. It sounded like all the oxygen had been sucked out. Jason hit send. Then he looked up. He saw the faces of the front row. They weren't looking at him. They were looking over his head. Their mouths were open in shock. The VP of the tech giant was standing up, his face purple with rage. Jason turned around. He saw his own text message towering over him. He froze. He looked like a deer in headlights. He looked at the phone in his hand, then back at the screen. He tried to lock the phone. The screen behind him went black for a second, then lit up again. Incoming call. Elena. I didn't just mirror the screen. I routed the audio through the stadium speakers. "Answer it, Jason," I whispered to myself from the back of the room. He tried to decline the call. My code auto-accepted it. "Jason!" Elena's voice shrieked through the massive concert speakers. It was deafening. "I can't wipe the drives. The system is locked. It says, hello Mark on every screen. Jason, what did you do? If the FBI finds the bot farm data, we're going to prison." Jason dropped the phone. It clattered onto the stage. "Elena, shut up," he screamed at the floor. "Shut up." But it was too late. 3,000 people had heard it. The investors had heard it. The press had heard it. He wasn't just a failure. He wasn't just a fraud. He was caught, live in 4K, confessing to a felony. The VP of the tech giant walked up to the stage. He didn't take the stairs. He vaulted onto it. He grabbed the microphone stand and ripped the mic out of Jason's hand. "The deal is off," the VP shouted. "Lock the doors. Nobody leaves until we get the police in here." Jason looked around wildly. He looked for an exit. But I wasn't done. That was just the warm-up. He thought he was going to prison for fraud? No, that would be too easy. I had one more secret to reveal. One that would destroy him not just professionally, but personally. I reached into my pocket and pressed the final key on my remote. "Phase 2, I whispered. The auditorium was pandemonium. Investors were screaming into their phones, ordering sell-offs. Reporters were flashing photos of Jason's terrified face. The security guards were confused, not sure whether to arrest Jason or clear the room. Jason stood behind the podium, sweating through that $5,000 suit. He grabbed the microphone, his voice cracking. "Please, everyone, it's a deep fake. It's AI. My voice has been cloned. I love my fiancé. This is a sabotage attempt by a disgruntled ex-employee." He was fighting for his life. He was trying to salvage the one thing he had left, his alliance with Elena. If she turned on him, he was finished. He looked towards the backstage curtain, eyes pleading. Elena, come out here. Tell them. Tell them we're a team. From the shadows of the back of the room, I smiled. You want a team, Jason? Okay, let's show them the team. I hit the final key. The massive screen behind Jason went black. The text messages disappeared. The incoming call disappeared. A video file began to play. It was grainy, black and white footage. It was from the security camera inside Jason's private office. The timestamp was from 2 nights ago. The room went quiet again. The curiosity was too strong. On the screen, Jason was sitting at his desk. He wasn't alone. He was talking to a man in a sharp suit, his personal lawyer. They were drinking scotch. The audio was crystal clear. So, the structure is set? Jason asked in the video. It is, the lawyer replied. The Cayman accounts are exclusively in your name. The debt and the liability for the fraudulent traffic, that's all parked in the shell company. And who is listed as the primary signatory for the shell company? Jason asked, swirling his drink. Elena, the lawyer said. She signed the incorporation papers, thinking it was the wedding venue contract. She didn't read the fine print. If the feds come knocking, she goes down for the fraud. You're just the oblivious CEO who was misled by his CFO. On the screen, Jason laughed. He threw his head back and laughed. God, she's so stupid. She actually thinks we're getting married next month. I've already booked my flight to non-extradition territory for the day after the funds clear. I'm leaving her with nothing but a prison sentence and a fake engagement ring. Ruthless, the lawyer said. Business, Jason corrected him. She was useful to get Mark's passwords. Now? She's just loose cargo. The video ended. The screen went black. For 3 seconds, there was no sound in that room. It was the silence of 3,000 people witnessing a murder. A soul murder. Jason stared at the blank screen. He couldn't move. He couldn't speak. He knew there was no spinning this. There was no deep fake excuse that could explain the specific details of the shell company. Then, a sound came from the side of the stage. It was a low, guttural scream. Elena walked out from behind the heavy velvet curtains. She looked like a ghost. Her face was drained of all color. She was shaking so violently that her heels were clattering against the wooden stage floor. She had heard every word. She had seen him laugh about destroying her life. Jason turned to her. He held up his hands. Babe, wait, I can explain. It's out of context. She didn't let him finish. Elena didn't scream. She didn't cry. She lunged. She hit him with the force of a freight train. She tackled him into the podium. The wood splintered. The microphone screeched with feedback. They tumbled to the ground in a tangle of limbs. You monster, she shrieked, clawing at his face. I gave you everything. I betrayed Mark for you. She was confessing, loudly, into the lapel mic that was still pinned to Jason's jacket. I stole the codes, she screamed, pounding her fists into his chest. I planted the evidence. I did everything you told me to do, and you set me up. The entire room watched in horror. It was Shakespearean. The king and queen of the tech world, rolling on the floor, tearing each other apart, confessing to every crime they had committed, live on camera. I saw the doors burst open. The police had arrived. But they weren't just regular beat cops. These were agents in windbreakers with FBI printed on the back in yellow letters. They rushed the stage. They had to pull Elena off of him. She was still screaming, spitting in his face. Jason was bleeding from a scratch on his cheek, looking at the agents with pure terror. I watched as they handcuffed Jason. Then I watched as they handcuffed Elena. She looked up as they dragged her away. She looked out into the audience, her eyes wild, searching. Mark, she screamed. Mark, I'm sorry. Mark, help me. I didn't step forward. I didn't yell back. I just stood in the shadows, holding my tray of empty champagne glasses. They were dragged off the stage, out the side exit, flashing lights reflecting off the massive screen that still displayed the Sentient logo. The crowd began to murmur, then shout. The tech giant executives were furiously talking to their legal teams. The reporters were sprinting for the exits to get the shot of the perp walk. I set the tray down on a table. I took off my waiter's vest and draped it over a chair. I adjusted my collar. I walked toward the exit. No one stopped me. No one knew who I was. I was just a face in the crowd. But I wasn't done yet. There was one loose end. One final piece of business to attend to before I disappeared for good. The aftermath wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. The FBI didn't need to do much investigation. The video footage of the confession was played on every news channel from Tokyo to New York. Jason and Elena became the faces of corporate greed. They were denied bail, flight risk. The trial lasted 3 weeks. I didn't go. I watched it on a brand new television in a very comfortable living room. The jury took less than an hour to deliberate. Guilty on all counts. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. Jason got 20 years in federal prison. The last I heard, he works in the prison laundry, washing sheets for 12 cents an hour. He doesn't smile anymore. Elena got 15 years. She tried to cut a deal by testifying against Jason, but the judge wasn't interested. She writes me letters sometimes. She says she still loves me. She says she was manipulated. I burn them without opening them. As for Sentient, the company imploded. The stock went to zero in 4 hours. The investors lost everything. The office furniture was auctioned off. But here's the part that puts a smile on my face every morning. Remember that tech giant VP? The one who stormed the stage? 2 days after the disaster, he received an email. It was from me. It was short. It said, "The code you saw on stage was a shell. The real algorithm, the one that actually works, is encrypted on a drive in my pocket. If you still want to revolutionize logistics, I'm available for consulting. My rate is $50 million. Non-negotiable." They didn't argue. They didn't negotiate. They wired the money the next morning. I didn't buy a yacht. I didn't buy an island. I didn't become them. I went back to that diner in New Jersey, the one with the cold parking lot. The owner, an old guy named Sal, was struggling to pay his rent. I bought the building. I renovated it. I gave Sal a job for life where he just sits and drinks coffee. And every night I leave the back door unlocked, just in case someone out there is cold, hungry, and needs a second chance. Because I learned something in that freezing car. I learned that money doesn't make you a king. Integrity does. Jason and Elena thought they were building an empire on my back. They thought they could bury me. But they made one fatal mistake. They didn't realize they were burying a seed. If you think Jason and Elena got what they deserved, hit that like button. And subscribe if you want to hear how I took down a corrupt landlord next.